if you're concerned about education in Virginia and you think that one of the answers is increasing choice for parents, then you've come to the right place. Because we have with us right now the school choice king of Virginia today, Senator Mark Obenshain, Republican from Harrisonburg. You know the senator. He ran for attorney general, got beat by a few hundred votes by Mark Herring, lest we forget that. And hey, Senator, great to have you.
John, it's good to be with you. Thanks for having me on.
Always a pleasure. Can you tell our audience, yesterday really got landmark legislation out of committee on school choice. Can you tell everybody what happened?
Yeah, you bet. Charter schools have been an important component in education reform across the country. In Virginia, we allow charter schools, but we have one of the weakest charter school laws in the country. And it has been long the goal of education reformers to change our law. And in order to do that, unfortunately, we've got to change our Constitution to allow, open up the charter approval process. Yesterday, for the first time ever, we got, not just out of committee, but out of the Senate of Virginia, a constitutional amendment that will make it possible for us to expand charter schools in communities where they really need help. So that was a big day for education reform, not just for school choice, but just for better schools and better opportunities for kids and families in Virginia.
So what happens now?
Well, right now it's going to the House of Delegates, and it has to pass the House of Delegates, and because it's a constitutional amendment, we have to come back and pass it next year. And we will also pass legislation to go with it. But if everything goes according to plan, next November of 2016, the same time we're having the presidential election on the ballot in Virginia, will be a constitutional amendment to empower charter schools in the Commonwealth of Virginia. And frankly, I think it's a red letter day for education when we're able to move forward with charter reform.
Senator Obenshain, why has it taken so long?
That's a darn good question. You look across the country, and this has not traditionally been a partisan issue. There are, large majority of the states, 41 states in the country, have really robust charter school laws. We're about the third weakest in the country, and many of those states, are left-leaning states like New York, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Michigan, and we have just, for whatever reason, not been able to link arms and say we want to make meaningful changes in Virginia. And I think part of it is the Virginia Education Association is uneasy about it. School boards are uneasy about giving up some of the ability to dictate a one-size-fits-all school system in Virginia. Some school systems, like Virginia Beach and now Norfolk, is considering a charter application, but a little bit more willing to consider charters. But for the most part, they've stood up and blocked efforts in the General Assembly to move forward with this. And what I think they'll find is, I think they'll be pleasantly surprised. In Virginia Beach, there was a charter, I think 2 years ago, that was set up. School was half traditional school, or school building, half traditional school, half charter. And notwithstanding concerns that were expressed by the teachers' organizations and others, there was a long line of teachers, a waiting list for teachers who wanted to teach in that school. It's good for parents, it's good for kids, it's good for teachers.
The bottom line is that being able to expand charter school opportunity across Virginia is part of just giving parents and students additional choices to make. And
it is, and there may be communities in Virginia where there's not going to be a lot of demand for charter schools.
Right.
And frankly, I live in an area where our public schools are doing a really good job. I'm sure that, and obviously by virtue of the fact that there's some private school options, there are some who feel like their children need another option. But we also have communities where our school systems are just failing a large number of kids, and those communities really need help. One of my colleagues stood up, the Democratic minority leader stood up and said, you know what? Virginia has the fourth best schools in the country. And, we may very well. But the fact of the matter is we've got communities, jurisdictions around Virginia that aren't even in the top 100 around the country, probably not within the top 1,000 school districts in the country.
Right.
And those kids are being failed, and we've got to give them some options.
Well, and the bottom line is, Senator Obenshain, just what you said. It's based on demand. I mean, a charter school has to be, you have to make the application. You got to get approved, obviously. It's got to be validated. For a charter school to be successful, the founders of it have to understand that there has to be a demand for what their charter school is going to do with the area that they're in. If there isn't a demand there, then the charter school simply will be financially unsuccessful. So it's really based on parents, students, basic economic freedoms, choice, and if the demand is there and they do a good job, they'll continue to get students in. Everybody wins. I've always been troubled by the opposition to charter schools. Senator, whenever any entrenched establishment is afraid of competition, legitimate competition, I mean, isn't that worrisome?
Yeah, it is. And quite frankly, I think that at the end of the day, if we're successful and charter schools are robust and healthy in Virginia, it's going to be good news for everybody.
Absolutely.
It's going to be good news for our public school system because it's going to raise the water level for everybody across the board in Virginia, and we're going to be doing a better job for our kids. There's nothing to be afraid of with a little bit of competition. And when you talk about demand, another one of my colleagues stood up and his argument in opposition to charter schools is it's unfair. We've got long lines in places like D.C., and we're picking kids by lottery to go into charter schools. Well, John, I was an economics major in college, an economist by education, and I don't remember learning in any economics class I ever took that the solution to too much demand is to cut off the supply. It just is wrong. People are looking for this kind of alternative, and the answer to it is to give it to them. It's not to say, no, we're not going to give it to anybody.
Well, because eventually, with what you have on the table right now, if all this went through, eventually it would allow for additional charter schools to be sanctioned and come up so that the supply would equal the demand. But cutting off the supply because a shortage of it and then saying, well, it's not fair because there's a lottery and you got to draw straws. I mean, that is crazy logic. It isn't even logic. It's just crazy talk.
Well, you know what? We're gonna have a situation in a few years in which we're going to be going into. I hope that we're going to have some bipartisan cooperation on this. I mean, we really should. This ought not be a Republican, Democrat, liberal, conservative issue. It's one where we ought to have people crossing the lines. Unfortunately, yesterday the vote was a party line vote. And if it stays that way, and I hope it doesn't, honestly, if it stays that way, though, I'm going to be going into communities, and the supporters of charter schools are going to be going into communities represented by Democrats with school systems that are going to be benefiting the most in Virginia and say, we were fighting for your kids. And your legislator was fighting against providing your kids with the options that are giving them opportunities that you never dreamed of. It is critical for us to link arms and set aside partisan differences in order to work on this, because if we don't, there are going to be electoral consequences to pay in addition. And, it's one that's just a common sense measure, and we need to just set aside the special interests and do what's right for our kids.
Absolutely. Common Sense News Time back on the John Fredericks Show with Senator Mark Obenshain. We need to get the Senator Obenshain, we need to get you a theme song like Chap Peterson.
I am blown away by Chap's ad on your show. It's truly amazing. I do need theme music.
You got to get a theme music. We'll have to get in touch with your campaign stuff about that. Terry McAuliffe, I had him on my show yesterday, by the way. He finally invited me to one of his happy hours, so we're fired up. In the budget that he laid out, Senator, he's got this $1 billion provider tax. Have you had a chance to dig into it at all?
Well, look, we are experiencing a budget shortfall, no question about it. But the answer to this problem and the challenge posed by that is not to impose higher taxes on Virginians. And there are a number of proposals that are built into the governor's budget proposal that are just going to make Virginia a more difficult place for businesses to operate, for individuals to live and support their families. And we really, especially now, need to hold the line on tax increases. Nationally, the economy is barely recovering. And as I said, I was educated as an economist, and none of my economics education ever indicated to me that the best way to give a boost to a recovery is to raise taxes. And Virginia's standing as a great place to do business is already suffering. And if we impose further tax increases in Virginia, I think we're going to continue to suffer.
Yeah, I mean, there's no way that increasing taxes is going to be the answer. Yesterday, the House passed a transparency bill for education dealing with the 2013 education compromise that went down. Is the Senate going to take that up, and do you see any major changes from what the House did?
Well, it's got a long way to travel, and I imagine that we're going to see it. And frankly, I'm a parent right now sending college tuition checks to one of our state institutions of higher learning, and we have at times in the past balanced the budget on the backs of college kids and their families. We really do a lot in Virginia that doesn't fit with priorities. To me, education, transportation, law enforcement ought to be priorities, but people ought to have the confidence that our money, our tax dollars, are being spent responsibly, and transparency certainly adds to that. I would expect that transparency measures can be warmly received. I would never predict the outcome of something that may be weeks away in the General Assembly, but we'll have a robust dialogue about it.
Okay, Senator, we're out of time. We want to thank Senator Mark Obenshain for being with us, and Senator, I also want to congratulate you for finally getting your legislation for expanding the opportunity for charter schools out of committee. This is the first time it's happened. Now it's got a real opportunity, and this really could be game-changing for parents and students in Virginia. I just want to tell you how much I appreciate your tireless efforts on his behalf, sir. Thank you.
Well, thanks so much. We got to get it through the House delegates now.